From the Global Washington Conference in Seattle, Washington, it's the 10th anniversary. I'm Stan Emmerich. The BOMA Project works all around the world. Kathleen Colson is here to talk about the BOMA Project. So just tell us what the BOMA Project is.
We work with women living in extreme poverty in the arid lands of Africa, which is 40% of the African continent. And we target the most vulnerable women in order to help them survive drought and famine, which is the primary shock that they experience. And so the goal is that we put them through a program of sequenced interventions that includes a cash grant to start an income-generating activity, training, mentoring, training in both life skills and business skills, helping them establish a savings program. And in 2 years, they graduate out of extreme poverty. And at the point that they're graduating out of extreme poverty, we're seeing about a 78% increase in income, about a 1,400% increase in savings, and most importantly, a 67% decline in children going to bed without an evening meal.
Wow. So the woman who you would likely say, we're going to help this person, what does she look like?
She most likely lives in a hut that's made of branches with skins on top. She is married but doesn't see her husband very often because he's often away with the livestock. She'll have 4 to 6 children, and she'll be in her late 20s, early 30s. She has one piece of cloth that is her clothes. She doesn't have enough food to feed herself and her children.
Wow. That sounds like a very, very tough problem.
Yes. I mean, it absolutely defines extreme poverty. There are a lot of interventions for people living in poverty. But when you're dealing with people that are living in extreme poverty, programs, social protection programs, or microfinance programs, they're not reaching this segment of the population. These are people that also experience shocks, like drought and famine. So they're more likely than other groups to possibly migrate and resettle to urban areas. And in order for us to help them adapt to a changing climate, because we see the work we do as an intersection between gender and extreme poverty and climate change, we need to give them new skills. We need to give them money so that they can survive shocks. So when that drought comes, they've got savings that they're going to be able to survive on.
If you just give them money, it needs to get spent and then it goes away. But what it sounds like is you're giving them conditional money that's based on you doing something with it.
Yes, it's a conditional grant, and it is to be used for an income generating activity. So they have to come up with a business plan, they have to execute on it. There's a second grant that comes to them once they're successful in getting that business established.
If they live in an area where nobody else has money, how do you build a business there?
People ask that all the time. There is enough money in the system. It is a livestock-based economy primarily, and this is what you see from the Horn of Africa to the Sahel. All across that arid lands of Africa area, it's primarily driven by livestock economies. So there is money in the economy, but sometimes it isn't cash, right? So we're bringing women into a cash economy. They also didn't have small businesses in these very remote villages. They would have to walk anywhere from 8 to 30 kilometers to buy tea and sugar. They now can buy it in their little remote villages where we help them set up businesses.
Yeah, because it's the businesses that they build that make that happen.
Right, exactly.
How is this different from microcredit?
Because we give them a grant, so it's easier and cheaper to give people a grant to get them up the next ladder of breaking out of the cycle of extreme poverty. Microlending requires collecting money once a month, once a week. It's very high interest rates, very high administrative costs, and we realize for the region where we work, where we could drive for 3 hours and not see another village, that it's just a lot easier just to give people the money. And the reality is that 97% of the businesses that we help women start are still in business at 3 years.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. Because, a lot of businesses in the United States that start, they're not in business after 3 years.
Right.
Do you give them continual support, or do you just give them the grant, teach them how to do it, and say good luck?
We're surrounded by people that have a lot of problems. They've got health issues, they're trying to send their kids to school. And we had to be really clear about what we do and what we don't do. And then we also had to be really clear that we wanted a defined intervention and a defined exit strategy and clear definitions of success. So we measure success and we collect data on every woman in our program. And the success is around food security, a sustainable livelihood, savings, and that they're investing back in their children. And right now our graduation rate that has an algorithm to determine it, we're graduating about 90% of the women out of extreme poverty.
Wow. So you say most of them are married. Do the men get in the way?
No, actually, people find this surprising, but actually the men are very supportive of the program.
Oh.
These are husbands and fathers that are away from their families, moving with the livestock, to be reassured that their wife and their children actually have an income so that they can support themselves. They find that very comforting. So I actually have men come up to me all the time and say, I want my wife in the program.
Wow. Does government get in the way?
No, actually, when we think about the program that we've designed, and we now have 6 years of hard stats to demonstrate that the program works, we now want to look at how can we make this part of systemic change. So we're actually working with the government of Kenya to be able to get them to adopt our model as part of their social protection strategies.
Why Kenya?
I went to school there.
Ethiopia?
I went to school there, and I was a safari guide for many years.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, so I was
So
involved.
you got to tell us a story, but let's have the story be one of success of a woman who has succeeded in your program.
When we were first introducing our program, we would go to the villages and say, here's what we're going to do. And one of our founding principles is local leadership and community consultation. We want the community to really support the program. And so we presented the program, and it's in the midst of a terrible drought. And this one young woman came up to me and she had tears in her eyes and she said, if this program doesn't work, my children are dead. And everybody else is like praising us, oh, this is so wonderful. And she knew, this is it. I am at the end of my rope. I have no food for my kids. This is it. And so we said, okay, that's our challenge. She's now in the program. 6 months later, her husband comes back. I'm in the field. He comes up to me and he says, I want to know what's going on with my wife. And I said, what do you mean? He said, when I came back, I thought I would find one of my children dead, and instead I find my children are all alive and my wife is plump. He thought she was having an affair. And we said, no, actually, she's been in the program, and she's very successful, and her name's Malawan, and I actually just saw her last month, and she's doing great.
So what is success to you from an organizational standpoint then?
Right now we're scaling our model. So success for us is when the Kenya government adopts our model, and when we also establish partnerships with other large NGOs.
What are your metrics of success?
Our metrics of success are around the data that we collect, like income and savings and food security. Because we've always had a commitment to collecting metrics on every person in the program, that is what has gotten us in the door. We make monitoring and evaluation strategies integral to our model. Instead of something you do on the side occasionally, it's what we do every day as part of program delivery. So when I'm making pitches to organizations like the ones I'm meeting here today, I lead with our stats. So we have a partnership with Mercy Corps, we have a partnership with Catholic Relief Services, and we want to be able to take our program across the arid lands of Africa with on the back of those NGOs that already have the infrastructure in place.
Sounds like organizations right here at Global Washington. How has this conference been for you?
Oh, it's been great. I've already secured some funding for an important programmatic thing, and continuing conversations with partners that we'd like to work closely with.
Kathleen, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. Take care.